Welcome to Principles of Ecology. Today, we are going to explore a fascinating topic called survivorship curves. Have you ever wondered why some animals have just one baby, while others lay thousands of eggs? We will uncover the mathematical and ecological secrets behind life, death, and survival in nature. Let us dive right in. Let us start with a simple thought experiment. Imagine tracking 1,000 human babies, 1,000 baby sea turtles, and 1,000 baby birds, all born on the exact same day. After 1 year, almost all the human babies are still alive due to intense parental care. But out of the 1,000 sea turtles, maybe only 10 survive the perilous dash to the ocean. The birds face a steady, predictable risk of death every single day. This highlights a fundamental truth. Different species have vastly different strategies for survival. Now that we see how survival strategies differ, how do we actually visualize them? Ecologists use a powerful tool called a survivorship curve. This is a graphical representation showing the proportion of individuals from an original population that survive to each specific age. We call this original group of individuals, born at the exact same time, a cohort. To build this curve, we plot the age of the organisms on the horizontal axis and the number of survivors on the vertical axis. As we plot these curves, we run into a mathematical challenge. Because populations can start with millions of individuals and drop to single digits, a standard graph would be impossible to read. Therefore, the vertical axis is almost always plotted on a logarithmic scale. This logarithmic scale is crucial because it allows ecologists to clearly see the rate of mortality, or death rate, at different life stages, rather than just looking at raw numbers. It gives us a true picture of survival dynamics. Before we dive into the math, let us understand why this matters in the real world. Understanding survivorship curves is absolutely critical for wildlife conservation. If we know an endangered turtle has massive early death, protecting the eggs has the biggest impact. Conversely, to control an invasive pest, targeting adults before they reproduce might be most effective. Without these curves, ecologists would be guessing blindly. Even human life insurance companies use these exact same mathematical principles to predict life expectancy and calculate premiums. Now that we understand the concept, let us look at the mathematics behind it. Before we can draw any curves, we must calculate the data points. The core metric is age-specific survivorship, denoted by LX. This formula simply calculates a percentage. It divides the number of survivors right now, NX, by the number of babies we started with, N0. As time passes and individuals die off, NX decreases, which means our survivorship value, LX, also decreases. It is a simple but powerful way to track life. Let us apply this formula with a practical example from the field. Suppose a wildlife biologist is tracking a newly born cohort of gray wolves. We are given that the initial number of pups is 200. After exactly 1 year, 150 wolves are still alive. We need to find the survivorship proportion at year 1. We choose our survivorship formula and plug in 150 for N1 and 200 for N0. Dividing these gives us 0.75. Physically, this means 75% of the pups survived their first year, indicating good parental care. Continuing with our wolf pack, the biologist checks back after 5 years. Now only 20 wolves remain from the original cohort. We want to find the survivorship at year 5. Again, we use our formula. Our starting population, N0, remains fixed at 200. Our current survivors, N5, is 20. Dividing 20 by 200 gives us 0.10. This tells us that only 10% of the original cohort managed to survive to age 5. This steep drop shows that life in the wild is harsh as the wolves age. Now that we have calculated survivorship values, what happens when we plot them on a graph? By plotting these data points, ecologists have discovered that nature generally follows 3 distinct patterns, or life history strategies. We classify these as Type 1, Type 2, and Type 3 survivorship curves. Each type represents a completely different evolutionary approach to reproduction and survival, ranging from heavy parental investment to abandoning millions of offspring to the elements. Let us examine each one individually. Let us look at the first strategy, the Type 1 curve. On a graph, this curve is relatively flat at the top and then drops steeply at the very end. This represents species like humans and elephants. These species have an evolutionary strategy where they produce very few offspring, but they invest heavily in parental care. Because of this intense protection and nurturing, most individuals survive through infancy and adulthood, only dying off when they reach old age. Moving on to the second strategy, we have the Type 2 curve. Visually, this appears as a straight diagonal line pointing downward on our logarithmic graph. This represents species like songbirds or small mammals, such as mice. For these animals, the chance of dying is constant every single day of their lives, regardless of whether they are young, middle-aged, or old. They face a steady, predictable risk from predators and disease throughout their entire lifespan. Finally, we have the Type 3 curve. This curve drops incredibly steeply right at the beginning and then flattens out for the few survivors. This represents species like frogs, fish, and oak trees. Their strategy is to produce thousands or millions of offspring, but provide absolutely zero parental care. The vast majority are eaten or die immediately. However, the few lucky individuals that survive this brutal early stage grow large and often live for a very long time. Let us bring all these concepts together and look at the actual diagram. On the horizontal axis, we have relative age, from birth to maximum lifespan. On the vertical axis, we have the number of survivors on a logarithmic scale, starting at 1,000. Notice the red line at the top. That is the Type 1 curve, staying high until old age. The blue diagonal line is the Type 2 curve, showing constant mortality. And the green line, plunging downward immediately, is the Type 3 curve, showing massive early death. This single image beautifully summarizes the life and death struggles of different species. Now that we have seen the diagram, let us tackle a slightly different problem. Instead of just calculating survivorship, we must interpret raw data to identify a species' survival strategy. An ecologist tracks a cohort of 1,000 butterfly eggs. After 1 week, only 50 caterpillars remain. After 2 weeks, 45 remain. After 3 weeks, 40 adult butterflies remain. We are asked to determine what type of survivorship curve this butterfly species exhibits. To solve this, we need to analyze where the most massive loss of life occurs. Let us calculate the deaths week by week to solve this. In the very first week, we subtract 50 from 1,000, meaning a staggering 950 individuals died. However, in the second week, only 5 individuals died. In the third week, Again, only 5 died. This means that 95% of the population was wiped out almost immediately after birth, but the few that survived had a high chance of continuing to live. This massive early mortality, followed by high adult survival, is the textbook definition of a type 3 survivorship curve. We have covered a lot of ground today, so let us review the key takeaways. Survivorship curves are a beautiful and simple way to visualize the life history strategies of different species. Remember that we plot the number of survivors against age on a logarithmic scale to clearly see mortality rates. We learned about type 1 species that protect their young, type 2 species that face constant daily threats, and type 3 species that abandon millions of offspring to the elements. Mastering this allows ecologists to predict population changes and design effective conservation strategies. Great job following along.